Hey everyone, this is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row. Thanks so much for listening to the following broadcast, courtesy of Public House Media.
Everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy, and you probably are too. I haven't heard from you guys in a while, or you haven't heard from me. It's Lindsay, and I'm here with Elisabeth, and we are here as usual to talk nerdy to you. Today, we are going to play a little bit of geeky family feud, I suppose. We wanted to talk about things that are the good arguments about what wins in the best of geek feuds. So we're going to talk about what the actual feud is, and then probably which ones we think should win too. First, Elisabeth is going to talk about Gaming Corner.
Yep, and if you saw my post earlier this week, you know I have been immersed in the world of the Outer Worlds. Xbox Game Pass came up again for $1, so I went ahead and snatched that up, and the Outer Worlds happened to be in there, offered as one of the games for free with the Game Pass. So, of course, I had to play it because I've been waiting to play this game for so long. From the marketing before, it kind of seemed like a Fallout but in space kind of thing, and it didn't quite have as much of the wasteland vibe as I think some people had been making it out to be, but it did definitely still have some of that retro feel with all of the aesthetic of like the buildings, the styles, the people, everything like that. So I got to play the game finally, and I absolutely loved it. I finished it in just a few days, really, which is pretty impressive for me because I normally like to do like every little thing on the way. So nice little chunk of time, lots of little side quests to kind of occupy yourself, so it's not just like one big linear thing, you know, unless you just want it to be. But I really have to hand it to Obsidian because I had seen a tweet by somebody, and they were talking about how they actually started development for this game back in like 2012, and they announced it in, I think, initially in like 2015, and they finally delivered it this year, and there was no delays, there was no time crunch, there was nothing like that. There's no like microtransactions, there's no season pass, there's no kind of little, ways that they're just going to try and nickel and dime you out of everything. There was no super special collector's edition pre-order with all of this random crap that, you get like a bag or a figure or something. I don't know. And that's something that I really, really respect Obsidian for, is really just sticking to their guns, making a game and then making a good game and delivering on that promise, because it's something that I think a lot of game companies have really kind of strayed away from, is that they'll crunch and rush to get games out, games that aren't really fully finished, games that may be broken, games that they'll fix later with patches or DLC filled with microtransactions and ways to just get every little bit out of you that it can. And Obsidian right now is sitting as one of the finer examples of the game development community where, yes, you can take your time, you can develop a good game, a good solid game, and you can deliver that, and that's all you really need to do. You don't have to have all this extra stuff going on. If it's a good game, people will like it. Amazing concept, nice. I know.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I actually feel like almost about a year ago we had that discussion where that one game came out that wasn't completely done, that I think you actually had to record an episode just to talk about by yourself.
Do you remember that? That was Fallout 76, and this is like the perfect opportunity to talk about that because they have just come out now that it's going to be out for going on a year now, they are coming out with this Fallout First, where you can pay a monthly subscription fee or a yearly subscription fee of a mere $100 per year. And you get this private server, which, turns out it's not really private. And you get this special storage unit, which, it deletes your stuff. So, yeah, that's lovely. So, yeah, good going, Bethesda. Why? Just why?
Right. How to be exactly the opposite of what Obsidian just did.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward in our feud.
Yes.
There's actually a few articles out there that you can read that actually talk about the most common feuds that there are, and surprisingly, some of the articles are from a long way back, 2006 and more previously. But these kinds of things have been pretty standard as what people argue about. I thought it was interesting because I recently had listened to Neil deGrasse Tyson very recently came out with a book about it's letters to an astrophysicist, and he even talks about a letter that he got from a girl who, right when Pluto was decided to not be a planet, and she had written him, now she's 35-year-old woman, but at the time she had written to him and had just said why can't Pluto be a planet? Lots of people are upset about Pluto not being a planet. You guys should just say that it's a planet. So we're going to start out with that one.
Yeah, scientific definitions are just so weird, the way that they come up and the way that they're delivered and perceived. I'm still never going to say that Pluto is not a planet. That's just me personally. That's me being stubborn. There's not really necessarily anything logical about it, but I also don't care.
Let's be serious. Growing up, my favorite planet was always Pluto.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of liked Saturn because it had rings around it, but I always really liked Pluto the most. And my best friend and I always loved Pluto the most. It was our favorite. So, it's always going to be a planet for me, too. I guess when you, Wikipedia it says Pluto is a dwarf planet.
A dwarf planet, yeah.
So, dwarfs are people, too. Does that mean dwarf planets are planets, too?
And it's Pluto is, my second favorite Senshi. So, are we going to take away her status because Pluto's no longer a planet?
Oh, man. Wouldn't that be rough?
Ooh, that would start a riot.
She's definitely one of my favorites, too. And now that I think about it, maybe Pluto is my favorite planet because she was my favorite Senshi. Is that possible?
It could definitely be, because Saturn is my favorite planet, and it's also my favorite Senshi, so...
One of them came before the other, for sure. I'm just not sure which. And I feel like all of that was a very formative time for me. So, it's possible. And we've talked about Saturn, too. She's a pretty cool one as well. I don't know hardly very much of her story at all, but I do know that it's pretty stellar. So
I think I love her so much because she's so misunderstood by the other Senshi, especially when she first comes on the scene. And maybe that's why I still love Pluto as a planet, because I feel like it's misunderstood now.
Now it's like the angry child.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take it. All right, so how about... I love how we took the planets of Pluto being a planet and took it to Sailor Moon. That's just fantastic.
That's just how we do around here.
All right, so you're going to have to help me out with the next couple of them. Freddy versus Jason. Are we still really on our Halloween horror movie type thing?
I am Halloween vibes all year round. So.
All year long. Now, Freddy is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
Right? And Jason is...
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
They're two very, very different villains in terms of their characters, how they're portrayed, and how they're seen, and how their effects are felt. So Freddy, his power and his effect, his his reach is more in the realm of dreams. So you fall asleep, and then he can control your environment. He can control you. He can kill you. Jason is more of just the stereotypical silent slasher who goes after teens trying to have sex in the middle of the woods or in cabins or, whatever the situation. That's usually some sort of hanky-panky going on that he interrupts.
Okay.
So, and he doesn't speak. He wears a hockey mask. His usual weapon is a machete, but I mean, he uses other weapons too. So his is a lot less charismatic than Freddy, but they were coming out kind of around the same time. So
and it's
a lot of people like to compare them.
The people that they were after to kill and or scare the holy cannolis out of were the same demographic, basically. So, and then I think during they each have more than one movie, right?
Oh yeah, they both have tons of movies, both separately, and then they have one together, Freddy versus Jason. So it's really interesting, I think, how they brought them together in their duo movie.
Okay, interesting good or interesting bad? Because I'll admit I probably saw it, but I'm not sure that I was able to analyze it or really do very much more than make fun, laugh.
Honestly, I would say both. Because, I mean, there are some interesting elements to it, but, I mean, overall, they're just two very different characters, and it's not really fair to compare them, at least in my opinion. Just because it's like apples and oranges,
But hold on. We're playing a feud right now.
Yes.
So you have to choose.
If I have to choose, I'd go with Freddy. And that's kind of who Freddy versus Jason went with. Because at the end of the movie, you see Jason holding Freddy's head, but Freddy opens his eyes and starts to laugh. So it's like Freddy's still going to get the last laugh. Yeah.
See, I feel like because his main playing field is like the realm of dreams, there's a lot of... I've always been more scared by like psychological thrillers.
Me too.
And I feel like when you're not sure what's real and what's not, it's a much scarier scenario. Because I can run from whatever's chasing me, but in my dreams I might not be able to. And that really freaks me out. I know even like when I am dreaming and I'm having one of those dreams where things just aren't quite right, and I get that realization that like this would never happen in real life. I would never make these kinds of decisions. When I realize that inside of my dream, I'm always like kind of relieved to find out that I didn't actually do that, and eventually I will wake up and this won't be how my life is going to go for the rest of it. I think I agree with you. I feel like Freddy, because of that realm, makes him scarier. If that's
like if I had to choose who is going to be coming after me.
Right. And on this whole thing, too, we could also talk about how they did the Predator versus Alien.
Yes. Oh. Two of my favorite little aliens against each other.
And I don't know. I remember watching Predator with my dad, like sitting on the floor, and it's funny too because like my daughter would never watch scary movies with me. She would never sit on the floor in front of the TV watching Predator or Alien or anything like this. But I know that I was about her age when I was sitting there like trying to figure out why Arnold Schwarzenegger was so upset and there were so many trees and stuff. Like, that is the same movie, right?
Yeah, okay. that was the first Predator movie.
You were really quiet. I was a little worried for a second.
That was the first Predator movie, and honestly, like out of the two, I would say the Xenomorph or the alien from Aliens is technically the scariest, but I still prefer the Predator aliens.
Why?
Because I like them better. They're cool. They're awesome. Like they're intelligent. Like a Xenomorph is just really hunting on instinct. A Predator thinks, and he can counter like that. And I think with the Xenomorphs, it's a little bit more of a primal fear. Whereas with the Predator, it's like you really have to like work your brain, you know? And I also kind of respect them in a way because if they come upon, like, somebody who is just, like, completely defenseless, they don't have a weapon, they aren't trying to fight or anything, they'll actually leave them alone because they don't deem them worthy of fighting, you know, if they aren't going to put up a fight. So okay. I kind of sort of respect them for that.
Huh. I actually feel like there was a video game out there at some point in time that if you played the game against the predators and you made a mistake,
they would make you pay.
Learned from whatever you were doing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Gosh, no, it does.
I did an awful lot of watching people play games at some point in time in my life. I don't know, high school, something like that. And I feel like someone showed me that you could do things in the game, but if you didn't do the right thing, or if you went back and they saw you or something, even if you got away, they would remember, they would learn in the game.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really scary.
Well, yeah. And I think
I'll be honest, I've always been afraid of the predators more than the aliens, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's, I think, you know, pretty true to how they would be, like, in real life, because if you were to fight against them and you make a mistake, or even if you're just, you know, fighting them, they're going to be watching, they're going to be observing, they're going to be picking out any strengths and weaknesses so that they can exploit it. Whereas whereas a xenomorph, they're just going to be coming after you.
Yep.
So.
Cool. Okay. So, this one's all you if you want to talk about it.
What, the Juggernaut versus the Blob?
Yes.
Okay, so the Juggernaut versus the Blob. They are two characters from Marvel, from the X-Men specifically. Juggernaut, he has been featured in movies. The Blob has featured in one movie that I can't think of off the top of my head, and it was Wolverine Origins, so that doesn't even really matter anyway. You know, he might have been in X3. I can't remember because it's been so long since I've seen that. But regardless, so it's kind of the argument of the unstoppable force meets the unmovable object. So the Blob he absorbs anything coming in at him, and he doesn't feel any pain. And then the Juggernaut, he literally can't be stopped. Like, it's, like, once he starts going, he has to stop himself, or else he'll keep going. So it's kind of like, you know, just the dichotomy of if they were like to fight each other, you know.
This is like the Newton laws of motion.
Yeah.
Like an object in motion wants to stay in motion, and an object at rest wants to stay at rest.
Exactly. Now, there have been cases where the Blob has been moved, but the argument is not just would the Juggernaut move him, is would he win? And that's, I think, a lot harder to pin down, because sure, he could get him to move. He has been moved before in the comics, but how do you win against something that is so not only so difficult to move, but also feels no pain? You know what I'm saying? Like, how would you reach their breaking point if you can't get them to that point? Like, how do you know if you're getting them to that point or not? And how do they know?
They don't know either. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Huh. It's like there is a medical condition where people don't feel pain, and they have to be extremely, extremely careful, because they could get a cut and not even know it. And they could get infected
and bleed out.
Yeah. It's they have to be extremely careful, because, I mean, you think about it, pain, as much as it sucks, it tells us that something is wrong, and it alerts us to that. There have been lots of times where, you know, we could have been seriously hurt if we kept on doing something, whereas we stopped because, oh, ouch, I'm in pain, something's wrong, I gotta stop. You know? Yes,
exactly. It's even like the classic put your hand on the oven thing. If we didn't know that the oven was hot, that reflex is there for a reason.
Yeah. So,
is there an answer to this one?
No.
Probably not. That's the debate.
Yeah, that is the debate, is who would win. So I think it's it would be extremely difficult to say. I would, as much as I love the Juggernaut, I would probably give the edge to the Blob, just because unseating him is one thing, but defeating him is another. And it would just be so difficult to even get him to that point. I don't know. I don't think Juggernaut would be the one to do it. I think it would have to be somebody a lot more powerful than him.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Who's the best doctor?
I think you would be a lot more apt to talk about this one, because, I mean, I have seen 2 doctors so far, and I definitely have my opinions on them. But,
I know.
But what do you think about them? Oh, no, actually, no, I take that back. I've seen 3 doctors. Because I did go ahead and see the new doctor.
Okay. Yeah, because we had that one episode where I needed your opinion. Mm-hmm.
Yep, so I have seen 3. So...
I don't know. This one's not fair. Because first of all, there's all of those doctors in the BBC before Eccleston that I don't even know that I've seen very many. I've seen Tom Baker in like 1 episode. And that's about it. I definitely need to have more under my belt in order to have more of an opinion. Now, I have seen all of Eccleston, all of Tennant, all of Smith, all of Capaldi, and 1 episode of Jodie. So, I feel like
out of the
new Who's, opinion is everything.
Yes.
And companions are important too. Like, if I don't know, if there was no Amelia Pond and Rory, would Matt Smith be as great? Ugh. I don't know. Gosh, I love Capaldi and I love Clara, but would they be as great without like the love story with Danny Pink? I don't know. I'm really. I could tell you what my favorite episode is. But I really don't think that constitutes as being my... I have my favorite doctor, but do I think he's the best doctor?
And I think that's like the heart of it, is that it's so individualized, because each doctor
speaks
encompasses...
to someone differently.
Yeah, it encompasses different things at different times, which makes sense, because it's all about like the regeneration and rebirth. You know, you address something in one life, and so you don't have that in the next life, but you have something else to address and work on. So
exactly,
you know, it's all about, I think, a combination of what that doctor is currently working out and what he himself is learning, and also, you know, the companions that he has at that point in time that speak to him.
And that's what's so cool about the show too, is that if you watch it in different periods of your life, it can speak to different things in your life as well. So, you know, it transforms based on how you have developed in your life as well. I feel like I could go back and watch Tennant and Smith and have a completely different opinion, knowing where they're going to go with Capaldi, but also having had different life experiences. So I completely get that. I think the whole who's the best doctor thing is really...
It's more of a subjective thing than something that you can really take as a factual, definitive answer.
Exactly. And if there was like a ranking system of, you know, who wins the most battles or who fights the biggest boss, you know, like the master / mistress comes up several times, and the battle there changes, and the whole relationship changes as well. I feel like you can't put a rating system to that either. And that's okay. Like, I think that's really what is so endearing about the show. And even, you know, watching things about, you know, my daughter has done an awful lot of like reading the companion's companion book and stuff like that. Like, it's really cute to see her do, but it's also like very interesting because she has completely different opinions, and she really wants to like watch the the first several doctors because they have longer pages in the companion book, like she wants to know more about them, and I'm all for that. Like, let's do this thing. So it's kind of cool to see her get involved too, and we can make all the gender bent cosplays in the world and have a real good time with it. And I feel like that's really what that show is about, is like connecting with people and connecting always in different ways at different times of their lives. So
Definitely.
that one's one we can't answer either.
Yeah, because I think we'll file that under the too subjective category.
Yes. Yeah, and that's okay.
Yep. The other one that is a huge one in one of my fandoms, and it is also subjective and quite petty, honestly, especially with how heated certain people get over this. Like, the amount of vitriol it causes compared to the issue at hand is mind-boggling at times. But this is how lore nerds really geek out, I'll tell you. So the question is, do Balrogs have wings? So in Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Ring, when they're in Moria and Gandalf faces off against the Balrog, if you've watched the movies, you will see that they chose to give the Balrog wings. However, it is never actually explicitly stated in the books whether they actually have wings. And this has been one of the really big points of contentions between fans, especially because Tolkien never specified whether they have wings or not before his death. So, I mean, it's pretty much one of those things that will be forever unanswered. And the reason is because there are two different, well, not really different, but two contrasting descriptions given of the Balrog. At first, it says that the Balrog casts a dark shadow that reached out like two vast wings. So it kind of gives the impression that the shadow is kind of in the shape of wings, but not necessarily that it has wings. Okay. However, you skip down a few paragraphs, and it states that its wings were spread from wall to wall. So people, obviously, who say that the Balrog has wings will say that, oh, well, this is proof that he has wings, because it actually says right here he has wings. But people who say they don't have wings says that that's just a continuation of the earlier metaphor of the shadow reaching out like two vast wings. So, because, I mean, it doesn't really say either way whether it is or not. And there is kind of a third category, like a middle ground, where of people who say that the Balrog kind of has this kind of cloak of shadow, dark, like, energy, more or less, and that it can kind of take the shape of wings, but they aren't literal wings. So that's kind of like the bridge between the two. So, like, it has wings, but not wings. So, again, this is one of the things that we're never going to get an answer on because Tolkien passed away.
Because Tolkien's no longer with us.
Yeah, so unless we're going to perform a seance and ask him, Right.
Well, what's funny about that is how descriptive and clear and precise Tolkien was with so much. Like the Silmarillion and the way things were built to have something so simple be this mystery.
And the thing I find fascinating about his writing is that he uses so many words to say so much, but he can still remain so vague at the same time.
Right.
Like, that was one of my problems when I was very first reading the books, was because there was so much going on word-wise, but, like, me and my ADHD, like, I couldn't comprehend what was happening, what it looked like in my mind. And so I was really struggling with it. And the movies actually helped a lot because even though, I mean, obviously it's not an exact scene-for-scene adaptation, it still gave me a basis with which to draw from, and then I could go back and read it and be like, okay, I kind of understand what's happening now, So it's just, I think, one of his weird quirks with writing where he is so descriptive and yet so vague at the same time. And I have no idea how he does that. It bugs me so badly sometimes.
I feel sort of the same way, though. Like, I definitely understood more after the movies. And then when I went back and was able to read, like, The Hobbit, before it came out as a movie, there was a lot more understanding there. It might have been that I was so young when I tried to read them the first time. But, you know, it could have been both of those things, all of those things at the same time. Okay, so let's do the next one. Oh, I don't really want to talk about this one. We have had this discussion so many times. This one's going to be subjective as well. Just file it under subjective as well.
Yep.
DC versus Marvel. Oy vey.
And to me, this depends on what exactly you're talking about. Like, if you're talking about live action, I'd definitely have to give that to Marvel. If we're talking about animated, definitely DC. If we're talking about comics, it depends on what arcs you're thinking of, you know?
Yeah, I'll give you that. I feel like that would be an episode in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple more on here on this list that could be an episode in and of itself, too.
Definitely.
Let's do Goku versus Superman.
Yes, the age-old question, the OP versus the OP. Okay. So, I mean, we all know Superman. He's just super OP, can punch everything 999 times, 9,999 damage. You know, punch everything.
Are we talking about Goku at this point after he's, like, gone Super Saiyan, all that other stuff?
I assume they're talking about him now, I mean, now he's got this Super Saiyan God plus Ultra Instinct plus Super Saiyan Blue plus all this stuff. I swear they're making up new levels for Goku at this point.
Probably.
But while Goku versus Superman is an interesting debate, for one, because I mean obviously it's OP versus OP, which is boring and which kind of sucks. But I think it's interesting to see the melding of the two worlds of DC and Dragon Ball in general. And the thing is if, for whatever reason, Superman is in the world of Dragon Ball, and for whatever reason he is bad or he needs to be stopped, Goku, obviously he's going to volunteer to fight, as is Vegeta and lots of other people. If Superman defeats Goku, there is still plenty of people lining up who is more powerful than Goku, who could absolutely wipe the floor with Superman. I am absolutely convinced of that, 100%. My dude, Whis, is amazing, and he is, at least in the circles I run in, he is so underrated. He is this angel that takes care of Lord Beerus, the god of destruction, who... Lord Beerus is extremely powerful in and of itself. He has this little ability that can literally destroy a planet. So, God of Destruction, extremely powerful, and yet Whis can take him out with a single chop. So, Whis is extremely powerful too. Probably one of the most powerful forces in the world of Dragon Ball, no doubt about that. So, the whole thing that got me thinking about this is in the Broly movie, which Broly is an extremely powerful OP Saiyan, like even edging out Goku and Vegeta, and you know he fights Goku and Vegeta and Goku actually have to fuse together in order to defeat him. But you know, while they're kind of down and out and trying to recover, he tries to go after Whis, and for as much damage as he has landed on Goku and Vegeta both, he cannot land one single touch on Whis. Whis is dodging and dipping and diving like nobody's business, dancing around him, literally teasing him with, "Oh, you missed," you know, like he doesn't even need to fight him. And as OP as Whis actually is, I love him because to me that's how an OP character should be. Like, you shouldn't have to prove your power yourself all the time. Like, you know, just like, oh, this is kind of fun, you know.
Right.
So that the whole Goku versus Superman is I think just an attempt to pit the two most visible characters from their franchises against each other, but I think if we were to really consider the reality of DC and Dragon Ball actually coming together and fighting each other, I think there would be far more powerful players in the game to consider than just Goku.
That makes sense. Okay. So we're going to rapid fire through a couple of these because I know we could talk forever. That next one, I want to save that because one of those movies is coming out in December.
Yes.
And it might be really fun to take a look at it then and maybe even get a guest host or two. We'll see.
We'll see.
So let's talk about subtitles versus dubbing.
I prefer subtitles if I can.
Yep,
I
me
do.
too.
I like dubs. I won't like if they're the only thing available, I definitely wouldn't just toss them aside.
Right, I wouldn't not watch it because it's dubbed instead of subbed.
But certain things are just not translated well, or they're completely erased. Like the whole Uranus and Neptune being cousins instead of girlfriends thing.
I was about to say, if we do not talk about Sailor Moon, I'm going to be so disappointed. I feel like I was watching a completely different show.
Yeah.
When I was watching the subtitled movies back when I was like 12. It was like a completely different thing. Their relationships were totally different. Everything was totally different. And after having like dabbled at looking at the manga and looking at other media that was available, it was very clear that I was being gypped with the dubbing that had been presented on like whatever television channel, Cartoon Network that I was watching. So I totally get it. I would prefer subtitles, but there's a lot of shows that I'm seeing as far as like live action on Netflix where when they are subtitled instead of dubbed, it's hard to... when I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to read...
Yeah.
That's like the only time that I feel like the dubbing is okay.
Yeah.
We talked a couple of months ago about those shows that I was watching that were dubbed, but they were like weirdly dubbed where you couldn't watch the people's faces because obviously the timing of their lips and the words that they were saying weren't aligned. And that always really kind of irritates me. Like I'd rather hear whatever words they actually are saying and read them than But I also listen to a lot of shows, so in my life right now, that wouldn't exactly work.
Yeah, and see, like, subtitles in general don't bother me anyway. I prefer subtitles for everything because I don't hear very well, so I usually have subtitles on anyway because it's like, well, I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, It
comes in handy if you've got someone who is sleeping in the next room. As well, or if you just don't want the volume on quite as loud.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that in my old age I'm losing any of my hearing, but I have noticed when I've gone to a concert with my daughter, sometimes her ears hurt a little easier than mine do. So I'd be a little worried to hear what I'm actually missing.
Yeah.
Okay, so subtitles definitely wins for that one. I agree.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to read as long as I could read fast enough whenever it comes down to it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this one because I know so very little about game consoles and computer games and PlayStation and Xbox. And I did tell you that I'm trying to figure out the whole Christmas gift for the daughter because she wants to be able to play, I don't know, Minecraft or something.
Yeah.
And we decided what Xbox we're going to go with. I don't know. So, PlayStation or Xbox?
Yeah, that's a debate that has been going on for a long, long time. There have been like console wars ever since there have been consoles, basically. PlayStation and Xbox are just two of the biggest ones right now, and they've been on top for so long that, it's second nature. It's kind of like one of those fights these days that, like, you just kind of poke each other just because out of habit. At least that's how I perceive it. And I think a lot of it is fueled mostly by the console exclusives, which I think Xbox is trying to move away from and try to be more inclusive to, try and draw more people in. But I'm not sure how that's going to be with Sony, because they have really clamped down on a lot of exclusives. They have a lot of very successful exclusives. That God of War game that came out in, 2017? That was extremely successful, like, blew pretty much everything out of the water. Like, that's exclusively theirs. You will not play that on another console. And there's quite a few games like that where, they hold the rights to it and they won't allow any other console to be able to play it. Right. So I think that's, like, the main thing of what is fueling the console wars right now, because, I mean, if you're looking at, the different hardware specs and everything like that, I mean, it's very, very similar. Like, I mean, there's really very few differences. It's really going to come down to personal taste. And what really drives it is those exclusives. Me personally, I was a Sony girl for years. My very first console was a PS2, and I later got a PS3. But when I went to make the move to this next generation, I was going to get a PS4, mainly because I wanted to play Skyrim as Special Edition and mod it, because they were introducing that on the next generation consoles. And Sony tried to pull out on that deal and say, at first they were like, we'll allow mods, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, no, we're not going to have any mods at all. And then all of a sudden they came back with, oh, well, I guess we'll have mods, but you can't use any external assets, which means that you can't add anything into the game that isn't there already, which really, really limits your options when it comes to mods. I mean, you can't add, like, armor or weapons, like, say, from The Witcher or another game into Skyrim on PS4, because they aren't a part of those original assets in the game. So because of that, I went to Xbox, and I honestly haven't looked back since. I'm very happy with it. I mean, to me, it's not a huge deal because it's just a console. It's what I use to play the games. So,
right.
That's all it is to me. So Xbox wins for me right now, just because of all the crap that Sony tried to pull with pulling out of the mods and everything.
Sure.
I may be a little petty. I don't care.
Well, I feel like most people have one or the other. In order to be able to, like, afford the funding to be able to do both games or both gaming consoles, I feel like that's quite the commitment. And who has that kind of time? Like, if you're earning that kind of money to be able to do both those things, gosh,
are you going to have the time for it?
Right, but I hope you're, like, gaming for a living or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know we could talk forever about Twitch and the other stuff that's going on there too. Things where you can watch people play games. I know I did a lot of that in high school, but it was just because I was hanging out with cool people. So,
well, I've actually recorded a couple of missions and stuff. From my playthroughs on Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition. Especially the very first one I did was the Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts quest, because that is very involved and complicated. And
awesome.
We had a video that my husband was using, but the person who did the video was, like, running around and talking to a bunch of people that wasn't really necessary to
so
the mission. So I went through, did just the base run of the whole mission, and then uploaded it to YouTube for him. So now you can watch it whenever.
So there was like there was a couple computer games that I played when I was younger too that you could print out the walkthroughs. So essentially, it's basically giving anyone who would need it the ability to see what a walkthrough looks like and then emulate it themselves. Correct?
Yeah. And I mean, I've done I've read walkthroughs and stuff. But sometimes, like, the way some walkthroughs are worded are kind of vague or like not very helpful, and it's like, okay, I'm sitting here, what am I doing? Like, I don't understand this.
And it can be, you know, it can even come down to how you learn. You know, when we do things in the hospital and we say, well, what's your best way? What is the best way that you are presented information? Do you need pictures? Do you need paragraphs? Would you prefer being shown it? Like, it's exactly the same thing. If you are able to do it better by watching someone else do it first, all the more power to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to end with Geek on Fleek. I stole one of these topics for Geek on Fleek because I'm super excited. I am celebrating a birthday on Friday, and I am always talking about, we are always talking about the book versus the movie.
Yes.
But I get to go see, like, the second installation of book versus movie for Stephen King. And, I mean, someday, Elizabeth, we're going to have to do, like, a Stephen King episode just because I could talk about all of the books that I've read and the books that I've tried to read in the past few years and haven't managed to. I even got Dr. Sleep on Audible and haven't been able to get past the first chapter just because it's read by the guy. I think it's read by, it's not Woody Harrelson, but it's like a guy who's like Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
And he's reading it, and I got through like, geez, the first, maybe I am done with the first chapter, but it was rough.
Yeah.
And it's just written differently than The Shining was, and it's just different somehow. But when you get down to like these particular movies, so my Geek on Fleek is literally about the book versus the movie, but my fun little tidbit about that is The Shining versus the movie The Shining, and Dr. Sleep versus Dr. Sleep coming out on Friday. So, what's your take on the book versus the movie? I feel like I'm already going to know this answer.
The book.
Oh, the book, of course. And, I mean, there's something to be said about the visual representation. So, especially when the author is involved in the screenplay, such as, like, you know, if we could go back with Stephen King and, oh, man, I don't want to ruin the episode that I'm going to make you do with me.
Well, I mean,
even when it comes down to, like, The Storm of the Century, The Storm of the Century is in a screenplay. He wrote it that way.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful, but it lends a whole lot to be able to be portrayed in the actual movie or in the actual play or a read-through, if you will. So I feel like it really depends most of the time on what the original medium was and what the original intent was too. But I mean, most of the time, hands down, book first and book always. Do you read the book first or do you watch the movie first if the movie is available to you at the same time that the book is?
I always make a point to read the book first. And I think that's because there is a certain magic of being able to read a book without any preconceived notions or ideas and then watch the movie. Because I have had it where I've had to watch the movie first. And, I mean, it's fine. But, you know, I go into the book then expecting certain things and then something's different, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's easier to accept in a visual medium as opposed to, you know, a medium like a book.
Sure. But, I mean, it wouldn't surprise anyone to know that there are people out there who feel exactly the opposite. That whether they are imaginative enough to picture it on their own, or if they want the movie rendition first to be able to put those ideas in their head, it's been interesting to me to know that there are people out there who feel that way, because I have always been of the camp that you just read the book first if you can. If you are pinned against the wall and you're going to go see the movie, well, then you're going to go see the movie. But then I feel like after that, the book's just not quite... I did the same thing with Game of Thrones, where I was watching the show and tried to read the book afterwards. I feel like now reading the book would be fine, especially because they stray away so differently. But at the same time, the book was so close to the first season that I wasn't able to read more of the book because I just don't like to do things twice.
Yeah.
If I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that gets lost when you watch the movie first, where reading the book, you're either going to get yourself angry because of things that are missing or things that are different, or disappoint yourself in some way, shape, or form. Does that make sense?
Oh, no. It definitely does. Movies set things up in a way that it's, I think, easier to be disappointed than going the other way around. At least as long as the movie really stays true to the book. You know, I mean, obviously, if it's not a very good adaptation, then it's just not a very good adaptation. But
right.
You know.
And we even talked about, like, Ready Player One, where they were so vastly different from each other because of Spielberg's need to take himself out of so much of the references that they were completely different, and there was something perfect about the books, or about the book, and something that was also that the movie also brought to the table that the book didn't, because of the things it had to omit.
No, I get what you're saying. Where I think then the big thing about adaptations is that it has to keep with the spirit of it, because you know, it's two completely different mediums. You're not going to be able to directly transcribe everything from a book and have it be workable. But if you keep the spirit of it and you keep the characters and the character arcs and everything like that, I think that's the most important thing than keeping every little nitty-gritty detail the same.
Right. Well, and you know, when you ascribe yourself to be something like a reader, you almost lose whatever that is by watching the movie instead of reading the book, because there's just so much of the words that is lost because you've only got so much time to make the movie instead.
Yeah. Whereas with a book, you can kick back and just read it however long it takes you to read it.
Exactly. All right. Well, the rest of these I'm going to save for another episode, because let's be serious, we could talk forever.
Yes, we really could. So we now have a bunch of episode ideas coming in the next month, next year. So be ready for a lot of discussion heavy episodes coming up. So,
oh gosh, don't scare them away.
So, what did you guys think? Do you guys have any opinions on the debates that we've brought up? And what debates have you covered here that we didn't cover here that you think we should talk about? Because we do have quite a bit, like Lindsay said, that we didn't talk about specifically because we want to devote whole episodes to. So if those are one of them, you might be pleasantly surprised to see another one pop up on down the road. So get in touch with us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter, and let us know your thoughts. And until next time, I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Lindsay, and thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.